dozen T-bones for my early morning snack. So imagine what I could do to you. I could tear a telephone directory in two. Bending iron bars is something else that I can do. I always pick my teeth with the nearest billiard cue. So imagine what I could do to you. To see my many attributes won't need a second glance. You know if you resisted, you just wouldn't stand a chance. I can knock a hole right through a solid concrete wall. I can pull a tree out by its roots and that's not all. Now you know about me, you don't need a crystal ball to tell you just what I could do to you.
Hey, welcome, everybody. As you can tell, it's just me and Randy right now. Jeremy will join us shortly, but welcome to It's Still Real to Me. Randy, how's your week going so far?
Oh, we made a joke about they're always coming in threes, and before we could get to our next show, we got three, and it's kind of sad, Been a rough week. I'm sure, like you're trying to get your kid back in school and trying to get football season started. And last week, before we have the Tyler Van show on every week, and there's just a lot going on for fellas like us this time of the year that, Howie, we dedicate ourselves a lot of our time to high school football. And when we're not the other 9 months of the year, it seems like, life is simpler because here in about 2 weeks, our life gets complicated.
I'm glad you got 2 more weeks. Mine started this week, actually. So, but yeah, it really picks back up big time starting in 2 weeks. And, you kind of dread it till it gets here. Then you kind of look forward to it as well. It's a double-edged sword, I think is the old saying, something like that. So,
yeah, I actually next Friday will be on the air on Country Roads with a broadcast. So I say 2 more weeks, but next Friday night I'm live on the radio. Hey, and a special treat, Phil Harris live in the booth with me from the Sequatchie Valley Jamboree. And Phil and I haven't called a game together in 20 years, so it's going to be fun.
I think the last one that I remember y'all calling was, you disappeared.
Yeah.
I think the last one I remember you calling was Plainview against somebody in a playoff game.
I think you're right. I think that's.
I made the trip up there and got in the press box with you and joined y'all at halftime for a few minutes and talk. So
it was cold, is what I remember.
Yeah, it was right around Thanksgiving. It was.
Yeah.
It was like the third round of the playoffs, I think.
And he came up to a South Pittsburgh broadcast a few years ago, and I put him on the air, but I let him go. I had a brand new color man, and I wanted him to work with Phil because I told him I want him to work with the best in the business. And I put him on the air with Phil, who I tell you, Phil's our friend, and I love him, but just honestly, I would put him against any of the SEC color men, any of the college school. He is play-by-play. Phil Harris is one of the best in the world.
And that's going to be a week from Friday on the 11th.
Yes, Whitwell. It is Howard, Whitwell, Sequatchie County, Bledsoe County, Grundy County, and Ray County, all at Dunlap.
That's an old school jamboree game right there where you got a lot of teams coming in. And if I had to guess, they're playing maybe a half each.
Yeah, I think they're all playing a half. I think it's 6 quarters because Dunlap or Sequatchie County and Bledsoe County, which are playing the first game of the year, starts the jamboree off by letting their JV play a scrimmage. So there's not a full JV game between Sequatchie County and Bledsoe County, so it's kind of neat to see some of the 9th graders and 10th graders and some of the older kids that don't play a lot will kick the jamboree off against Bledsoe County. That'd be like kicking a Bledsoe. I mean, that'd be like kicking a jamboree off in the Sand Mountain with Sylvania and Plainview.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I love those days back. You know, I know everybody likes change and likes new stuff, but there's certain things that they should just leave alone. And I felt like jamborees is one of them, because that's, if you follow a certain team, you won't get to see a lot of other teams play. So bring several more teams in and do a jamboree like that.
well,
And kind of watch a little bit of it.
what's happened up here is this Chattanooga Jamboree has become 3 days, and everybody wants to go to it because it's at Finley Stadium.
Oh.
And it's hard to get those community jamborees like this one. Ray County's 5A and Whitwell's 1A. You'll never see those two teams on the field together in a regular season.
Right.
But, last year, Ray County played in the same jamboree, and Ray County came into that jamboree as a top 10 team in the state and lost 2 quarters of that jamboree against Grundy and Bledsoe. And just in that little bit, I called my uncle and everybody. I went to Ray County, and I grew up in Ray County, even though I'm an Indian by heart now. And I called my uncle, who's still a Ray County fan, and I said, they're in trouble. And you could see it in the jamboree when a 2A school was pushing them around.
Right. And one more thing that has changed that can't really be helped, but the way it is here in DeKalb and Jackson County. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's either a 1 through 3A school, basically, and they used to play each other. Every county school would play each other, and you can't do that no more, the way that they've got the area and the region set up down here now. And I miss that, being able to see some of the other county schools play.
I miss Plainview played Scottsboro every year. And it was nice to see Plainview come down from the mountain and play Scottsboro there for years. It was nice to see Fort Payne maybe once a year play against one of the better teams up on the mountain. The difference in DeKalb and Jackson County football from what it used to be a few years ago was best described by Coach Elmore. Talked about having 110 out at Fort Payne. And, of course, we interviewed Coach Grant on Monday night on Beyond the Booth with Phil and myself. Coach Grant at Ider has 25.
Right.
That is the difference in a school that probably has 400 kids in 12 grades and a school that will have 1,000 kids in 4 grades.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the difference between a 2A and a 6A here in Alabama.
Yeah, well, I guess they are 6A now. They were 5A for years, but
yeah, they're Fort Payne 6A now. Ider is a 2A school.
Yeah, it's and Ider's 2A. That shows you how little Valley Head is, that they're a 1A.
Right.
That's just incredible. But we talked about it. There's a boy coming in. Let me bring him in. We'll finish our conversation. We talked about it, Howie, a little bit. And one of the last fashion, we're talking about football, and then we're going into the tribute a little bit. JJ, I'm just finishing up. We talked to Coach Grant this week, and I know you listen to Phil and I, and I'm real proud of that show, and that show's growing. But one of the things we talked about on that show that is Sand Mountain, then up the Squatchy Valley. It's one of the last footholds of community football. So much stuff has changed. You think about here in Chattanooga, City High School closed, East Hamilton opened, and Ottawa kind of slid down. Up in Bradley County, they put a 3rd school in. Now you have Walker Valley in there. Ray County was a combination of Ray Central and Spring City. There is not the same feeling when you start consolidating schools, in my humble opinion, as going to Fife, Alabama, and seeing Fife that may have 550 kids in 4 grades. and still have 70 or 80 kids out for football. Or,
Uh,
well, or going to Fort Payne where you see
yeah.
110 out. 7 years ago, we played in the state quarterfinals, right? Sequatchie County, 3A. Alcoa, 3A. Alcoa, I'll never forget, we probably had 40-something out at Sequatchie County. Good numbers for a 3A school.
Mm-hmm.
Alcoa got out, and they were putting double numbers on kids. And
Yeah.
we're like, Coach, how many you got dressed out? He said, here's a roster. I think we're going to dress about 110 tonight. I'm like, you're a 3A school and you're going to dress 110? He goes, yes,
Yeah.
sir. And their bus showed up with the band, and the band was three charter buses. And I was like, there's no way there's only 500 kids in the school. 400 of them's out here right now. So,
Yeah. Well, I think the criteria that we use to classify, I think there's flaws in it, obviously. Uh, a lot of it's going to depend on the participation. You know, uh, you take Crossville, for example, not far from Fife, Alabama, 6A school.
yeah.
But they don't have, I think they had like less than 15 kids that turned out for football this year. So they're not going to have a football team.
Yeah. And that's
So,
exactly that's
so
why it's coming, Jeremy.
yeah, so a lot of it's participation. Now, if you look at Fife right now, and I know Coach
Probably
Spinefield,
50 kids.
huh?
Like 50
Now
kids.
they dressed out on varsity. They dressed out probably in the 30s, probably mid low 30s, and realistically, when the rubber met the road, there was probably only about 15 kids that saw the field because they played both ways. So at one time Fife was dressing out 60 plus. A lot of those didn't play either, but you legit there a few years they had enough players, good players that they could play one way, with the exception of maybe a few, and that's kind of dwindling. The classification thing, man, I don't know. You take Albertville. Albertville has teetered on 7A, and they don't have the type of participation nor the type of athlete to be competitive in that classification, or they haven't, and that's not saying they won't. So a lot of flaws in the system,
Well,
as far as the way.
there's a difference in the way, and just the last thing on football, there's a huge difference in the way Alabama and Tennessee treats private schools too.
Mm-hmm.
Understand, in a private school, you count all the kids on scholarships or financial aid as two bodies. So if you have a kid in that plays football and he's on financial aid, he counts 2 times against your total enrollment.
Yeah.
See, they've went full. We don't care where they come from. You bring them, you play them, and they've broken away. And they have their own. And people have criticized it, but Howie and Jeremy, Macaulay had a kid already committed to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Another been recruited to Kentucky or somewhere. Baylor this weekend, Mari Jefferson is going to pick between Alabama and Tennessee. There's probably 11 or 12 D1 recruits at both schools.
Yeah.
If that's what they want to play and they want to play that kind of football, let them play it. I certainly don't expect, like when I was in school, Jeremy, Ray County to have to be in the same as Macaulay, because Macaulay have 2 kids from Chattanooga on it anymore.
Yeah. I tell you, one of the things I've always appreciated about Fife, and I appreciate about Coach Benefield, is he doesn't get caught up in a lot of the stuff, and they'll line up and play anybody, no excuses. I kind of think back, they beat several private schools, Talladega or Tuscaloosa Academy last year, which was a very good team. They beat those guys. They beat Montgomery Catholic in the finals, 2021 or 2020, And then our basketball team that my son played on beat two private schools in the semifinals, and then in the finals. By the way, that was Montgomery Catholic also, but they beat a very good Cottage Hill Christian team that was had lost one game to a 7A, a very good Fairhope team in 7A. So we get people belly aching about, oh, well, they get all the athletes, or you having to play those private schools, you having to play recruits, and one thing I always loved about Fife, they just show up and play, and they'll play you no matter what in any sport. And they might not always come out on the winning end, but nobody makes excuses except for some of those ridiculous folks that every fan base has.
Yeah.
Nobody that matters makes an excuse about it. You show up and play.
And there's a level where you can go to. Like Baylor now plays like Mouth of Oaks and up in Virginia, and they go down to Florida. There's a level that's not high school football anymore, and that's what they play. And more power to.
And so it's.
Go ahead.
One more thing on that. So it's kind of sensitive when it comes to football. I know my son played basketball, and I was involved a lot, with the basketball team, as Howie knows. And if you want your kids to reach a higher plateau of competition and be able to compete at a higher level, you have to play better competition.
You do.
And some people don't want to lose, in which nobody wants to lose. All right, and you shouldn't want to lose if you compete. But the only way that you're going to get better is if you play great competition and you improve. And I know there's a kind of a fine line there with football, because if you're outmatched that much physically, you could start getting kids hurt and this, that, and the other. But to me, if I'm coaching any team, guess what? I want to play some good teams, because I want my kids to be exposed to good competition and know what it takes to really be a winner at a high level. So I don't know, man. Everybody wants to win. But sometimes a loss is not a bad thing if you learn something from it, and you realize seasons are long. There's a lot of football, a lot of basketball gets played.
And this show is a wrestling show, and it's basically one of those deals where a loss can get you over as well.
Yeah. That's right. You might not go over, but you can get over for sure. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. And the reason the football was brought up, because football is officially back tonight.
Yeah.
The game is on with the Jets and the Browns.
Unbelievable.
The starters is not actually playing, but hey, it's actually football. It's players that you hear about. So after all that being said, let's move on to Randy's got his Sylvania hat on. Last week we said we hope we didn't have to do one of these for quite some time. And like Randy said before Jeremy joined us, it seemed like it comes in threes when it comes to wrestlers and celebrities. And unfortunately, once again, we're going to do a tribute show here to probably, we say this a lot, but it more this time than any other time, to a man that changed the way professional wrestling is looked upon on Adrian Street. He's born December the 5th, 1940, passed away July 24th, 2023. Had a very long career, and one of the few wrestlers that was known by his real name, Adrian Street. Wasn't a gimmick name or nothing. It kind of sounds like one, but it kind of but it's not. It is his real name, and I know Randy's. It hit Randy hard when he heard about this, because he knew of Adrian Street as well. So before Randy gets started, Jeremy, I want you to go ahead and kind of kick us off a little bit, and then Randy, we're going to come to you. And I know you got a lot of things that you want to talk about, personal stories as well. So Jeremy, go ahead and kick us off.
Well, the thing about Adrian Street, and I may have said similar to superstar Billy Graham, but to me, Adrian Street was somewhat of a pioneer and his flamboyance. And I know we had Gorgeous George, and I know there was others scattered throughout early wrestling. Adrian started in 1957, I think, thereabouts. Wrestled his first match, under another name, but the persona that he's well known for, that most wrestling fans know him for, that was a kind of a pioneering persona, uh, trend setting. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was different. And we talked about the Sheik. Sheik found something that really worked, and so did Adrian Street.
Right, Randy.
I got to know Adrian Street through, we were talking about early on, and a lot of people don't know, and it's not something I hang my hat on to do this show, but I attempted to get in pro wrestling at one time and had a little success and worked a few shows and worked for the WCW as in another position, not as a talent. Here's the cool thing about it. The only professional wrestling equipment I ever owned was made by Miss Linda.
Wow.
And I don't have it. It's been gone many years, but I'd give anything to have that back now. They went to Florida and they opened up a wrestling school, and she was a seamstress. And she made us some stuff when we were trying to be a tag team, a friend of mine and I. And it was world-class stuff and not outrageously priced. And one of the guys that tried to train us, somebody that you wouldn't know out there, but he had actually done one of the last feuds with Adrian. Adrian, I didn't know this till I started researching this. Do y'all realize this man was 40 years old when he came to America?
I didn't know that.
40 years old, had a career, most people's career in England before he came. So he had one of the last feuds with Adrian, and I got to meet Adrian maybe twice. Sat in a room with him. He was a nice man, but he also put the air off of, you did not want to make this man, like, you didn't want to get in his space. And if you ever been in a room with somebody that was truly a nice guy, but put off the era of, I wouldn't try him. That was Adrian Street, and he was 5'6", guys.
Yeah.
Maybe even 5'5". I don't care what they built him at. He was a small man, but met me once and talked to me like he knew me my whole life. Didn't talk down to me. I have the famous story I tell about Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty calling me a mark, but
we are marks.
We are marks. But when I found out, I was truly sad because, strangely, I was sad because it's somebody I looked up to, because I love character wrestling, and this was a great, one of the top 10 characters of all times.
I would agree with that.
Adrian Adonis stole his gimmick. He didn't, because it wouldn't even equal to. If you want to get into what Adrian Street was, you have to go to Goldust, and to me, he's the person to what Adrian Street was. But not the nationally famous guy that we usually tribute, but definitely a legend. And my heart's sad right now. Rest in peace, Adrian. And as we try to tell this, I grabbed a couple of stories off the internet. So I'll shut up my rant at this point, but I did want to say up front, man, I really respected Adrian Street. When I'm in the room with Coach Benefield as a football coach, I have that instant respect that he is a living legend. When I was in the room with Adrian Street, I instantly had that instant respect of him as this was a living legend. So just that kind of personality.
Let's go back to a couple people that you named earlier. If it wasn't for Adrian Street doing what he did by the flamboyant face paint and coming out there in that character, we wouldn't have the likes of Adrian Adonis. We wouldn't have the likes of Gold Dust. We wouldn't have the likes of Stardust either.
No.
So he created, even though he didn't hands-on create, but by what he did, he created a different and a new type of wrestler. And to me, Stardust is one of the funniest gimmicks that there was, especially when he got electrocuted and had the Tourette's there for a while. That was hilarious. And if it wasn't for Adrian Street, we probably wouldn't have this.
You know what? I'll let Jeremy talk in a second. I'm going to go farther than that. If it's not for Adrian Street, I don't know if we have the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
I was just thinking that when you flash that picture.
Yeah, I don't know if we have Prince Pretty in NXT. I don't know if we have Dolph Ziggler. You know, he was flamboyant, but he also was like one of his books. He's wrote 4. I think he makes a very good case that David Bowie ripped the Ziggy Stardust character off of him. I think he makes a real good, because he wasn't just a wrestling character. He was a national celebrity in England.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he makes the point that David Bowie sees him as the exotic Adrian Street, and then comes the birth of Ziggy Stardust, you know. So this is, I think, more than even wrestling, I think influenced pop culture. Howie, he ended up tagging with Boogie Woogie Jimmy Valiant at one time.
Yes.
I mean, there's all the pretty boy wrestlers, I think, got to tip their hat to Adrian Street at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think it, you know, again, he was a pioneer. If you think about the error, I can't even speak this evening, that he began wrestling in, and, you know, came up through the 60s and 70s. And, you know, what was unique, and this is what's great about wrestling to me, and you know, I think it's what was great about early wrestling is those guys, they found what would work. And sometimes they found it by accident, because we've said this before, you know, you want to get a reaction, period, whether it's boos or whether it's cheers, you want to get some kind of reaction. And, you know, for him, I think his first match, he wrestled as Tarzan, Kid Tarzan Jonathan, is what he wrestled at. But he stumbled on this gimmick mainly because people were heckling him, giving him a hard time in the crowd, and he just started kind of, you know, playing with them, and he realized he was on to something. And then, you know, and like any good character, there's layers to it. It progresses. You know, Goldust, if we look at Goldust progressed from his initial debut as Goldust, you know, and so it just morphed into something that, to me, I one of the most unique wrestling characters that I know of, that I've ever seen.
In the South, in the 80s, playing an androgynous, I can't even say that word.
Androgynist.
I could say that. Yeah.
And all the way through his career, he never used the word gay.
No.
He never said he was or didn't was. I think everybody that watched him and had Miss Linda following him around for years just kind of assumed outside the ring that was his wife or something. But they had a weird relationship too. Like,
Yeah.
do you realize they were together from 1969 to 2005?
Before they were married.
And
Yeah.
never married. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and he would step on her getting in the ring, like put her down for. And he did that stuff to protect her because maybe it would get her some sympathy from people to keep them from charging over the fence at her. So
Yes.
Well,
Right. Take the heat off her.
yeah,
well, he needed to step on her because he was so small he couldn't get into the ring without some type of ladder or something.
truly, I felt a foot taller. I wouldn't have fought him for he was probably 50 years old when I met him. I was a foot taller, 100 pounds heavier, and I'd
Yeah.
rather walk in the street and find the first bobcat and take them on.
Well, he was a legit, you know, can I say it, badass.
Yeah.
He was not a. This was not he mess with, you know.
We still hear you.
Yeah. So my headphones just went dead. I knew they were going to. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, he was just legit. I mean, a legit shoot. He could fight, you know, and so what I thought was amazing to me, because I don't really ever feel like he looked that way, but they got him billed at like 235 pounds, at 5'5", 5'6".
So
You know,
in one of his shoots, just to add, he says he's 5'7", 210.
I probably more like it.
Was.
That's still a pretty solid guy.
Yeah.
210 at 5'7", 5'6". Yeah.
Being as bad as he is, nobody wanted to mess with him. Do you think that gave him even more courage to come out and do the things that he did, knowing that he could get away with it and nobody would bother him?
So I'm only going to tell a few stories tonight to keep away from it. But this one is, if you haven't heard it, go listen to it. There was a famous British celebrity, and I'm going to compare him to he ran Tops of the Pops, Jimmy Savalls. And now, came out a year later, he was very much a Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson kind of person. But Jimmy Savalls, who ran the most popular TV show in England, kind of mocked wrestling almost like in an Andy Kaufman way. And he made the mistake of getting in the ring with Adrian Street. And Adrian Street tells the whole backstory. But just to say it simple, there was a lot of guys that probably made this guy look good in England. Well, he pissed Adrian Street off, and he jerked him bald, scabbed him in, tore his hair out. He said, all I remember was I was watching hair fly. It looked like a cat being peeled with hair flying everywhere. Beat him up, broke his back. Guy never set foot in a wrestling again. And Howie, I think you're 100% right. He talked about these, and if you don't know the history of British wrestling, it kind of, being smartened up was like way down the road. So he wrestled his first two matches as a shoot and didn't know they were staged. I mean, it was his third match when somebody finally smarted him up. And that's because he won the main event in 2 minutes. He's like, finally I walked into the back and somebody was like, you're not going to draw money like this. And he's like, what do you mean draw money? I beat him in 2 minutes. I won a world championship match. He goes, and then finally learns the difference. He's in there beating the shit out of people. Sorry, everybody. He's beating the tar out of people. He don't know they're supposed to be cooperating.
No.
So, yeah, you're right, Hal. He's just that persona. And he was not shy about talking about it. That's the one thing that would kind of get on you. He would tell you, I'm bad, and I am the baddest man in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to believe that during his wrestling career, he made a lot of his own gear and everything. I was trying to think of the right word, but he made a lot of his gear and a lot of the other people's gear as well.
Yeah.
And one of the most famous, I didn't know it, and I heard it on a podcast earlier this week. I think maybe Tony Schiavone said it or somebody, but anyway, he made Mankind's first gear, or
He
Dude
did.
Loves. Dude Loves.
He made
Love.
gear for the Stone Cold Steve Austin match. So
Right.
the tie-dye.
Yeah.
And and it fit perfect. It was a perfect fit for Dude Love.
Yep. Listen, I'm gonna turn it over to y'all to talk because I'm a little sad right now.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody, I don't remember him. I remember hearing about him. I remember seeing him in the magazines. He was like in every magazine every week. I would go with my mom to the grocery stores, and back then they had a newsstand magazine rack there full of wrestling magazines. You'd probably 10 or 15 that was coming out basically weekly. And Adrian, you could just about guarantee every week Adrian Street was in every one of them.
Yeah.
And, so I don't remember seeing him wrestle, but doing some research and looking here on Wikipedia, his last match was June 14th, 2014 in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
And Street said he estimated that during his career, he had to wrestle between 12 to 15,000 matches. I mean, that's just unheard of.
Well, I think it's kind of unique that we're not unique, but kind of appropriate. I think if I'm understanding correctly and what I read, he made his debut in North America, in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yes.
With Continental Wrestling. I think was that Bob Armstrong's.
That's for Bob Armstrong, yeah.
Yeah. So he made his debut in Birmingham, Alabama, and how appropriate that you wrestle your last match in Birmingham, Alabama. So one of the things I guess that we've talked about his character and the androgynous character there, and one of the things I think is kind of ironic is that he wrestled in the Southeast in Southern wrestling the amount that he did, and with that being said, being in the South and playing that kind of character, garnered. He debuted as a babyface actually, but makes you wonder how much real legit he got just because of the character that he played.
Yeah, especially in the South. Yeah, like
in the South. But I think his debut, he's actually saving Bullet Bob Armstrong from an attack. But again,
he had been there for a while. It actually shocked everybody, Jeremy. He was a bad heel. Everybody hated him. He'd been feuding the Wildcat Wendell Cooley, and then he turned face by saving Bob Armstrong. That's maybe the biggest angle of his career down there in Continental.
Well, what better way to turn babyface than to save Bullet Bob? Right.
Yeah, because we don't really know if it's really Bob Armstrong or not. It was always the Bullet, because Bob Armstrong was suspended from wrestling for a lifetime ban. He was banned from wrestling, so we don't really know if it was Bob Armstrong or not. It was just Bullet. That's all we know.
The Bullet.
You're right. We don't know that was Bob Armstrong.
Yeah. Wink, wink.
It's still real to me, guys. Come on.
Look, he'd have to have more than a mask for us not to know if it was Bullet Bob or not.
A different song than he came out to then.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like y'all said, it was in 2005 when he finally proposed to the Miss Linda, and they got married and everything. Been together all those years, and finally bit. Since we're talking about bullets, I guess he bit the bullet and married Miss Linda in 2005, and and stayed together until his death.
Yeah. And Randall had the pleasure of getting to actually meet him, and of course, I've watched a few interviews and stuff, and Miss Linda seems like was such a kind, genuine person. From what you can't tell that completely about a person just from a few minutes of an interview, but they seem like genuine people, uh, from what I have been able to watch and stuff. So,
Well, great trivia question. You just set it up. They was a start before Birmingham.
oh,
The Adrian Street and Miss Linda was a member of the first Jimmy Cornette family. And there's a big shoot about that in one of his interviews, just in Memphis for a couple, little while. Went back later, but we love Cornette. When he said the name Cornette, I was like, Jimmy Cornette was his manager. But then I chased Cornette down, Jeremy, because he had an interview about Miss Linda, and he starts it out by talking about exactly what you just said, how she is the nicest, sweetest lady on the world, and you wouldn't want to fight her for love or money. And in one of his shoot interviews, the interviewer asked her, who is tougher, Jim Cornette or Miss Linda? And he was, that's Miss Linda. Said, by far, if someone come over the rail, we wanted her to get him instead of Jimmy Cornette. So she's a tough lady, but everybody talked about what. And you know what? And in the society today, we don't see this enough. I truly believe that woman loved that man. To follow him around from 1969 to the day he died, from ringside to ringside. Yeah. And whenever you see an interview, there's one on called WSI, and you can tell Adrian can't hear. And Miss Linda sits there intentionally and just interprets everything for him. So, yeah, I think you said it well. Jeremy, thank you for making the point. She made the act in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we've talked about with Adrian doing the stuff he did, giving us Adrian Adonis and Stardust and all this stuff. But also, they could be considered the very first Macho Man, Miss Elizabeth type couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt, because you can see a lot of similarities, and you were talking about he would step on her to get into the ring and some of those things. And, you think about the Macho Man, and, it made people fall in love with Elizabeth because there was sympathy there. There was, it turned the heat up on the main character, but it also elevated the valet because of, they wanted to see better for her. So I can only imagine the kind of heat in those wrestling arenas that he had with that treatment.
It's ironic. One of his big feuds in '85 in Memphis was with Adrian Street. From Memphis, he goes to the WWF, and Miss Elizabeth is his valet. Straight link from Adrian and Miss Linda to Elizabeth and the Macho Man. I want to play. I'm going to not tell stories now. I just want to play a couple of clips. This one is in Memphis, and he in his little shoot interview. This is right after ICW. Nobody wants to work with Randy Savage because, let's face it, Randy Savage is crazy. We all know it.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie Gilbert came to him and said, thank God you're going to have to work with Savage. He spits the match. He'll throw Coca-Cola on you, and said he went to the locker room and told Randy Savage, you won't do that to me, and you'll treat me with respect, or I will kick your ass. This is a promo, and this feels like a little bit of shoot to it. Adrian Adonis to Randy Savage, Memphis, 1985 with Lance Russell.
Another one. I was fantastic flag. I think it is certainly interesting. I was very disappointed everybody didn't stand up and salute when I walked in. No way. I mean, you understand these people are ex-colonials, you know, they still have respect for the people who sort of put them where they are now. Yes. Saved them from the French, you understand, and then they sort of kind of turn around on us, but you know, we forget about that. As long as they still pay their tax. On the tea they owe us from Boston Tea Party. But never mind about that. Please. I am more interested in this macho man, Randy Savage. Oh, yeah. Whereas he is the epitome of American manhood. Well, everything I said in the first place just goes to show. I mean, if he represents America, as far as manhood is concerned, I've got more manhood in my little finger than Randy Savage has got in his whole body.
Well, you're going to find out why they call him Macho Man. He's pure athlete, and when you meet him...
so put? Pure athlete, yes, I've seen him. He's got one of those weeder bodies.
Yeah.
One of those weeder type bodies. I train with Richard Simmons myself, and I will show him the brains are far more.
So Joe Wiedemer, athlete, he flexes up and he goes, I prefer Richard Simmons.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Good. But, I mean, he still spoke with that thick Welsh accent, you know? Yeah. So, and Colin Randy Savage just said, if you're an example of American athlete, then I've got more athletic ability in my little finger.
Yeah. Fantastic promo.
Yeah, you got one that was crazy and you got one that acted crazy.
Yes, no doubt.
So you got one more promo you fix and pull up and play for us, Randy?
Yeah, I'm gonna. It's
Well, while you're pulling up, in a roundabout way, Adrian Street created a lot of wrestling in the 80s that he didn't really do it, but by the way he did stuff, he did create a lot of that stuff. Like we've already said, the Stardust, Adrian Adonis, some of these other guys that dresses up with this crazy face stuff. And then with the Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth kind of following suit with Adrian Street and Miss Linda. And he kind of paved the way for smaller, height-wise wrestlers to be able to come in and do some of the stuff that they did.
Yes. And he talks about that in one of the shoot interviews about they said he couldn't make it in America because he was 5'6", and said when he came over here, he had to prove he was big and tough. He said when the guys gave him big guy, that they regretted it when they got him out in the ring.
And like I say, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have people like Rey Mysterio Jr. right now and some of these other smaller guys, because it was back then you had to, well, you didn't have to be, but it was better if you was close to 6 foot and 240 and 50 pounds. And then here comes this 5'6", 5'5", 5'6", 210 guy that could whoop any of the giants in the wrestling ring back in those days.
Yeah. Guys, you also got guys, in that somewhat in that same area, Superstar Bill Dundee, probably somewhat equal in size.
Tag team or friends.
Say again, sir.
That he tagged with Bill Dundee at one point.
Did. And you got Dr. Tom Pritchard, by the way, worked with him some also. Yeah, and I guess it was a necessity for him, kind of piggybacking off what Howie said. It was a necessity for him to be that way, to be tough and because he did. That size, you come across timid or not aggressive or not tough, and you're done. And so he legit was. So I don't think he had to pretend. But for anybody else, that you're gonna have to rise to the occasion in that era to accomplish anything.
100%. I got this other interview pulled up. Ironically, it's with the superstar Bill Dundee.
Superstar.
Talk to him a little bit about some of the action.
A little better
which has
sound on
occurred,
this
maybe
one.
some action that is coming up, perhaps involving downtown Bruno, for instance.
Downtown Bruno, I believe he's had a haircut. And as far as Goofy and the Geek are concerned, I've got a message for them right now. I'll kiss you or I'll kick you. That's what I like the best, because I'm as tough as Marciano and as sexy as Mae West. I'm as cute as Shirley Temple and as fast as Bruce Lee. I could kill a man eventually. And although I don't like hitting women, in your case, Garvin, I'll make an exception. If you even look at my hair, I won't try to cut it.
Talking about Billy, of course.
All right,
Beauty of
don't
the
we have a
Beast.
tape or something of what happened to downtown Bruno? Ain't the man up there got a little button he can push and we can all see it because a picture's 1,000 words.
Hey, that's just classic. Just I'm as tough as Marciano and as cute as Mae West.
That's so good. It really is so good. And to think that all these guys, those promos, they did those on their own. You know.
Was that promo from the? I'm sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead.
No, they just let them speak freely, and that's took a lot of talent.
I was wondering if that promo was from the Continental days or from the Memphis days.
That's from Memphis. And I use Memphis a lot, guys, because there's probably more free stuff on YouTube from Memphis than any other territory. There is a good promo from Continental, and this is a heel promo. And not everybody's going to remember this guy, but at the time, Wildcat Wendell Cooley was the star of Continental. And this is a little short promo, Adrian, on Wildcat Wendell Cooley.
Life is expensive. Tools.
After the commercial, not a sponsor. That mess, here we go.
And the bullet here at the set at the same time. I've talked to both of them ahead of time. They have assured me there will be no problem.
Somebody we were expecting.
Talk to the exotic Adrian Street. By the way, it's nice to have Len McAllister of Ringside Publications, here with us on this hour. And your title goes on the line.
Yes, against the Cowboy, the Wildcat. Can you just imagine? You know, those ones, I've watched them do those rodeos. I mean, what is that, a competition just to show how badly people can ride? I mean, you'd never see a British person doing that. You know, when we have the fox hunt, you don't see them falling all over the place and sort of sledding off cows and all that sort of thing. But then, I suppose being kicked in the head so many times with their bad riding and all. Wildcat Cooley, the Cowboy, the Yellow Rose of Texas. I just call him the Yellow Texan. You understand? So anyway, I'm going to start off number one match, the number one wrestler, the most beautiful wrestler in the whole world, the exotic one. Number one, this shouldn't take me very long, actually. I'm probably doing more talking. It'll take me long to vanquish this man. I just want to test his courage, you understand? He looks very butch. I just want to test his courage.
Indeed. And so
He looks at Gordon Soley and he goes, "You look very bored," and walks off set.
Gosh, that's so good. I I couldn't help but think about the previous promo. We got to hear Lance Russell and then Gordon Soley on both of these.
I might have had these promos saved for another reason that we'll get next week.
Yeah. I was thinking that's what I was thinking. I was like, these two guys will definitely be on the list.
Well, the reason I asked which promotion it was the first time I ever heard of Downtown Bruno was on Continental Wrestling, and he was the manager of Lord Humongous, which we know who that ended up being, Mr. Softball himself, Sid Vicious. So, and a little tidbit there, I actually saw Sid Vicious wrestle one night in the old gym at Five High School, Jeremy.
Really? Wow.
They had a wrestling match at the old gym back in 90-something, and he was the headliner for that one. And he was as big as he appeared on TV.
Was he Sid Vicious or Laura Humongous?
It was Sid Vicious at this time.
So was this an independent show there? Or?
Yeah, it was. I can't. Well, it was something, Alabama Wrestlers Anonymous or something. I mean, I don't know what it was, but it was it was something like that. And me and a buddy of mine went just because Sid Vicious was going to be there.
Wow, no doubt. Wow.
So, but yeah, some great promos there, Randy, that you brought up, and just one quick note, something that you brought up to me when we was talking about it earlier this week, Randy, was he wrestled at a lot of different places, and he didn't stay very long wherever he went. Do you happen to know why?
He knew his value, and he knew that the exotic one, much like Andre the Giant, was more a one time, 5 times, but needed to move on to get maximum money. And he talked about the first time he went to Memphis, which was before he ever relocated, I think, to the U.S., that they tripled their house. But he also said that he knew if he stayed, he could draw as much money walking in the ring to have people look at him the first time he was there. But once you've seen the act, you've kind of seen the act,
Yeah.
And he was like, and he always, and he, something he learned early in his career in England, he was always looking for the most money. And he talks openly more than most wrestlers of that era does about, I would play promoters against promoters to get more money. I would go to this promoter and say, I'm getting this much money. And I'd stay for 5 months and I'd book up the Coliseum. Then I would go to this promoter and say, I'm getting this much money for this promoter, and this Coliseum was booked out. He did it so much around England that the promoters got together and realized they were overplaying Adrian Street. So when he come to the U.S., he did the same thing.
Yeah.
He was in Memphis. He was in Continental. He was in Mid-Atlantic. He was in Florida. He was in Mid-South. Guys, 9 years.
Yeah.
He wrestled in the U.S. 9 years, full time. And he done all those territories. And like he talked about, he did Memphis for 2 major stops. Continental was probably his longest stop because that was about a year, And I really, and he's done well in life. He's invested, he's bought houses and apartments, and that seemed to be. And he's one of those guys that they sold stuff for wrestling gears. Dutch Mantell made the point. No, it was Rip Rogers. Said if you brought $10 to the Coliseum, the first person to set up the booth was going to be Adrian Street. And he was going to get that $10 before the other guys even got there to try to get it. So he was very money conscious. But then again, you saw him and Miss Linda kind of living a full retiree's life and enjoying the spoils of life, So I think he was more of a money man than a lot of people were back then.
Well, and not only that, you mentioned he bought real estate and things of that nature, but he was multi-talented, had a couple of bands, actually had a couple of albums, had a wrestling school.
Do to you. Can you imagine what I could do to you?
Yeah. So, he was in a couple of movies. I didn't know that, but he was actually in a couple of movies. I think, Quest for Fire, 1981.
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of got this listed right here. He was in Grunt, the wrestling movie, 1985, which I never heard of, but maybe want to watch that.
Written in the 70s.
He was in the Canterbury Tales.
Okay.
Yeah.
He talked about in his shoot interview that they wanted him in this movie, and he was wrestling as the Nature Boy, Adrian Street. But when they wanted him in the movie, they wanted him to be more exotic. And doing that movie really moved him into wearing makeup to the ring, and kind of moved him from the Gorgeous George, Buddy Rogers kind of wrestler to the exotic Adrian Street. He talked about that movie being a big part of him becoming Adrian Street, exotic Adrian Street.
What a talented dude.
Yeah, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk. He did this last story. I swear I want to share another one, but in that shoot interview, which is going to be linked on RiverCity-Media, it's 2 hours long. If you love Adrian Street, go watch it. I've read 2 of the 4 books he's wrote. He's wrote 4 books about his life. He becomes a wrestler at 15 years old, basically because his dad's not a very good father. And his dad, basically everything Adrian wanted to do, his dad criticizes him. One of the album covers that he had in an independent band is a picture of his dad looking at him dressed as the Adrian Street character. And it became this thing where during this shoot interview, and he's 70 years old, they ask him about his life, and he spends the first 20 minutes of 2 hours talking about his life, talking about how he was going to prove his father wrong. We're all fathers here.
Mm-hmm.
I know if I heard my daughter say what he said about his father, it'd crush my heart. But back in the era, too many men grew up with those kind of dads that were like, they put him in a coal mine at 15 years old and said, "That's your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's your life. Go to the coal mine and work when you're 15 years old." And he said he just kind of left home at 16 to be a wrestler and never looked back. And he said, my only goal at 16 years old was to basically shove this up my dad's butt and prove to him that I can do it. So,
yeah.
Shout out to you, sir.
Yeah. No doubt. It makes you wonder. And I know it's, sometimes tough times can be avoided and, but it makes you wonder if he'd had a different dad, would he have had the same career though? Because that fueled him to do all the things that he did. So, but it does crush your heart to know that, he spent that much of his life trying to, prove his dad wrong or show him.
Kind of reminds you of a modern day Rock to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Mm-hmm. Going out, doing your own thing, being in movies, being on top of the world of wrestling for a while.
See what is texting. I can't see it right
someone that can speak, and do promos, and we heard several tonight that was just off the wall great. That some of the things he said might not fly real well today, but it was great back then.
It was controversial at best. So
yes.
I think if we were grown men, at the time, when I was seeing this, I was just a kid and I didn't realize it was kayfabe, and, but you always could look at Adrian Street and go, something don't add up, but you never knew exactly what he was either. It was all that. It was like Kevin Sullivan never used the word devil worshiper, but I guarantee you everybody in the state of Florida thought Kevin Sullivan, his whole tribe worshiped the devil.
Yeah.
Well, Adrian Street never used the word gay, but when he was kissing men on the lips, matter of fact, Jerry Jarrett, he kissed a black wrestler, and Jerry Jarrett ran into the ring and told him he killed his promotion by kissing a black man on TV in 1980. So, you always just wonder, but now to hear him and Miss Linda together, man, his life's a love story. It started out as a hate story and ends as a love story with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I heard somebody this week talking about him saying that he knew that he wasn't gay and he knew that him and Miss Linda were together, but he said he pulled it off so well that it still made him wonder if he was or wasn't by the way that he would blow kisses and wink at everybody.
Yes, it did.
My friend that worked a program with Adrian, I asked him that question And he goes, look, Miss Linda's his girlfriend. They're together. They live together. Everywhere they go, everywhere together. But he in his heart, he said, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, again, you talked about him being money conscious and stuff. He found something, again, wrestling about reaction. Can you get a reaction from the crowd, whether good, bad, whatever? And he realized, hey, I'm going to make money with this. Super flamboyant. Now that version right there is the version that I recall. That version right there.
It 45 years old, and I would have never dreamed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone else that he created basically without really creating them was the Gold Dust character. By the way, Gold Dust did the flamboyant stuff and and all this, and everybody thought, is he gay? Is he not? But then he walked out there with Miss Marlena, and it's like, wow, what?
So let me ask you something. So if you're Dustin Rhodes and you get given, I'm sure that gimmick, how much time did he spend watching Adrian Street? I'm sorry.
A bunch.
Yeah.
I knew that was my job. I'm finding as much footage of Adrian Street as I can, and I'm going to use as much of it as I can.
And Dusty and Adrian had this huge feud over years, and then Adrian had become Dusty's tag team partner. There's a good match on YouTube, Dusty and Adrian versus Maniac Mark Lewin and Kevin Sullivan in Florida. Worth your time to watch.
Wow.
I know Jeremy fell in love with his I Broke Wahoo, Rock Wahoo's Legs t-shirt, but I have found an Adrian Street t-shirt that's on its way to me that I'll have in 3 or 4 weeks.
I'll be looking one of those up.
It's that Adrian Street. So, Michael, to me, I think Vince McMahon's the most important character in wrestling in the last 100 years. Vince McMahon never had Adrian Street, but he created Adrian Adonis and Goldust.
Mm-hmm.
So Vince McMahon himself paid homage to Adrian Street in his own promotions by creating characters so similar.
Yeah, you'd have to believe that was the intention behind it for sure. Makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, and we all have heard and read, and anybody that does listens to anything wrestling related, that Vince at one point, he didn't like small guys, wanted the giants. You hear Chris Jericho talking about putting lifts in his shoes the first time he met Vince McMahon, because he wanted to look taller. It makes you wonder, do you think he ever reached out? Do you ever think he had an intention to sign Adrian Street?
I don't think so. I think he wanted to create Adrian Street and other people.
Yeah. Well, and that's been his MO throughout. It seems like he takes, people who are very popular and and have their own gimmick, and then when they come to him, he wants to spin it in a way that he could take credit for it. Now, I will say, Cody Rhodes, this version, he's not messed with Cody Rhodes.
It works. It works great. If he'd try to, I think if you tried to make this version of Cody Rhodes something else, it would have never worked.
No, never. No, but a couple of things I want to do, as we've talked about Adrian Street, is I've watched a couple of documentaries at least one really good one on Adrian Street, but it makes me want to dig a little further into it. More time than I spent, before we had this podcast. We had a little bit short notice,
Yeah.
When it happened. But what I love characters, and he's one of them. He's one of those that I remember. I didn't watch him a lot, but when you said Adrian Street, I know who. I remember exactly who that man was.
I say this every week, every character we do, but I really mean this after reading I reread about 3 chapters of the book. I've got it here. Jeremy, next time we see you, I'll pass it on.
Absolutely.
I reread 3 chapters of it, and if there's ever a man that deserves to have his life movie made about him, it might be Adrian Street. Just the fact that he comes from dirt poor Welsh as a farmer, coal miner, and becomes a world famous character, and the biggest star in England, which English wrestling in the 70s was huge, and just walks away from it because he doesn't like the direction of it, picks up everything he owns, moves to America, and starts a whole new career. Nobody knew who Adrian Street was in America, but in England, he was the most famous wrestler at the time. So it takes a lot of courage to move across the world and believe in yourself.
Right. Well, we've been on this for quite a while, and we will move on from this. Any closing remarks, Jeremy?
Well, unfortunately, we're doing these a lot more often than I care to do them. But I'll say this again, like I've said with others, when you get like to our age, where we're looking at middle of life, and I think about for me, wrestling was a big deal for me as a kid, and when you see these guys, and gals, by the way, leave us, you feel like you're losing. Even though we don't know them, never met them, you feel like you're losing something, losing a part of your childhood and stuff. And it's really sad. I will say this: he, 82 years old. He lived a long life. Probably longer than than I'm going to live. But a long, eventful life. So like to pay homage to these guys. What a character, what a career, what it meant to wrestling, and for all those who copied or emulated him in some way. What a great wrestling legend. I'll call him a legend.
And Jeremy, a lot of people look at the fame and the money they make, and they assume, but I'm telling you, it's not a glamorous life for 23 hours a day to be. And we've all done it. You do it for work all the time. Wake up in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and go to sleep in Foley, Alabama.
Hey, I've never been to Pascagoula, Mississippi.
I'm just popped first 2 places that popped in my mind, but I did it for a couple of years, working for Transamerica, and it become, I wake up in Chattanooga, have breakfast, go to Nashville to work, and sleep in Memphis. And I'm telling you, it's not near as glamorous as us fans want to think it is. Once you've seen inside of a Holiday Inn for 30 nights in a row, it's the last thing you want to see in life.
Yeah, and it is, and obviously I'm not a professional wrestler, but I kind of
on the road though.
Yeah,
on the road.
I've kind of related that. I thought about the kind of travel that those guys did, and waking up one night here, getting up early, all those things, and you're right. It's not, and for those, and that's why so many. Well, that's why it's unique that Miss Linda and Adrian spent were they worked together. They work together, but a lot of wrestling relationships don't make it because you're spending that amount of time away from home. You can't get. I'll say this because I can speak to this, but you can't get any kind of consistency. You go home and you wash clothes and you do a few things, and then it's time to pack again, and you're hitting the road again, and so it for me it's kind of kept me in this state of I won't say turmoil. I don't think that's it, but it's just you're unsettled because you're hopping around and stuff. So yeah, you're right. I don't even think that's a glamorous life, especially back in his day when most of that travel was done by car, getting on the road, driving, hundreds of miles a day. So yeah, not a glamorous life at all.
No, and together, 54 years. That's the true. That's the, I am going to be 57 in a couple of weeks. This man and woman was together my whole lifetime.
That's right. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe couple to do that and be together that long.
That's it. In other news, I do want to mention the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Adam Page re-signed their contract today. I kind of had some doubts. I honestly thought that Adam Page, if anyone, might be WWE bound. I really could see him going to WWE and being a superstar.
Here's what I don't disagree. I could see him going to WWE, but I think he goes to NXT first. Not that I necessarily think he would need that, but I think that would be a good starting place for him.
They even sent LA Knight to NXT, so yeah, everybody goes to it.
I got to tell you this today. So I was out in the market, so to speak, today, and we were at a food
territories.
I was in the territory, yeah. So we were at a Food City. By the way, Food City, great place to shop. But we were at a Food City, and we were looking at the display, and I could hear the two ladies working in the deli. And guess what they were talking about?
Wrestling.
They were talking about how long Roman Reigns was going to keep the title and who would beat Roman Reigns, and they can't break Bruno's record. And of course, I'm trying to be businesslike because we're in a group there, and I wanted to turn around and walk over there and go, LA Knight. But I just thought it was great that they two younger ladies was talking about wrestling, talking about there's no way they can let Jey Uso beat Roman Reigns.
Hey, I'm gonna throw your company a salute. I have switched from Diet Pepsi to Diet Coke because Diet Pepsi cannot keep their product on the counters. So I was forced to switch, and I've always said if I switch forever. So I went into the Dollar General store 3 weeks in a row to buy my Diet Pepsi, and they did not have it. So as of today, Randall Cunningham has a case of Diet Pepsi sitting in his floor. And if you know Randall Cunningham, or Diet Coke, if you know Randall Cunningham, for the last 20 years, I've drank Diet Pepsi. As of today, I'm a Diet man.
Come on over to the good guys, buddy. Come on over to the good guys.
DC for life, baby. DC for life. I need some shirts. I need some merch.
Yeah. We'll see what we can do there.
What are we doing next week, boss?
Hey, who knows? Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but somebody else may die between now and then.
Well, that's what I'm about to say. I hope not. But
if nothing happens, hey, before we get going, let's go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor.
Yes.
We didn't do that last week. Wilburn's Waxing Solutions. Randy, you get the picture up in just a second. But
well, I got 7,000 things uploaded to do this tribute, so you're going to have to be patient with me. Okay.
yeah. There's Wilburn's Waxing Solution, 256-996-9731. Call for free estimates, licensed and insured. I know some of his help will be going back to the school tomorrow, so he might not be as quick getting to it as he was, but he'll still get to it and do a great job as well. Thank him for sponsoring this show. And
as we found out last week, that does not include Brazilian.
Well, no, wait a minute. Now, we still got Labor Day weekend. If you need to get that beach body going. No, I'm sorry.
Beach bodies are over with. School starts back tomorrow, so no more beach. So
all out of school, aren't they?
Huh?
Yours is all out of school, right?
No, I've got a senior this year.
Okay, Howie, you've got a sophomore, right?
I got a freshman.
I got an 8th grader. Mine and Howie's goal is to live for our kids to become seniors, so they will leave the house. That's our goal.
Yeah, I've got the youngest got one more year here at 5, and so it's waiting on the grandkids to start to school at that point. So that's a few years off. So we'll go with that.
I had hair when this kid started school.
Well, I had dark hair when the kids started school. So I told somebody I got a side gig. I think I'm gonna pick up a side gig about November, and I'm working on my Santa Claus gig. Growing it out here and here.
Hey, curse you with. I grew the Scotty Steiner and didn't even bleach it in. I've just got 2 gray stripes in the middle of a mark.
Well,
the ugliest thing that's ever happened. It needs to go. I got 1 patch of brown left.
Well, look, all I want to hear is some Steiner math. That's all I want to hear.
3 plus 3 is
and a 3% chance of having a dark streak down your. Yeah.
Hey, there's a 50% chance that I might be the best person on this 3 and 3 and 3 show.
While we're promoting stuff and everything, Tuesday, August 15th, go to Chick-fil-A. Say you're there for Savannah Band. They're doing a spirit night that night, and portions of the sales will go to Savannah Band. So go out and help them out if you're in the Fort Payne area. Tuesday, August 15th, 2023, from 5 till 7.
Also got to mention Wing Fest this Saturday. And Sylvania, Alabama, 5 to 8. Come be a fat, gluttonous man, talk football, and eat wings. Well, you can be a fat, gluttonous woman too.
But 5 to 8 at the Wing Fest. But be there at 4 o'clock. That's when the Meet the Rams will take place. And it's not just the varsity teams. It's from Pee-wees all the way up to the varsity level, plus cheerleaders, plus band. So
I heard they were going to put together a Super Seniors tour.
Okay.
Okay.
Plus 50.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, guys, I didn't show up without a shirt on this week. You can tell everybody.
We're really grateful for that, too. So I did show up without a wrestling shirt, and I apologize. I had to blow in here really fast. So for those of you that, waiting on a wrestling shirt, I apologize. So
you didn't know whose leg.
Hey, so, I found a shirt I'm going to get, and it's not a T-shirt, but it's a Roosevelt's polo, and it's the Macho Man. I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of the Roosevelt shirts, but it's a polo, and the Macho Man coming off with the elbow all over it. I'm going to get one of those to wear to work. And just see if anybody notices, because they're great shirts and they're low key. So yeah, so I may show up wearing one of those at some point.
Hey, off of eBay, I bought a Cutter and Buck shirt today. Hey, it's like $100 pullover, $30 on eBay, never worn. Black, Tennessee. I'll have it on next week.
No, we'll be all right without that.
Quick story. Me and Jeremy takes off up to Nashville to watch Ric Flair's last match, and we get there real early. We're standing in line, and we keep ourselves entertained by watching all the T-shirts go by because you saw tons of different T-shirts, and Jeremy's like, "I've got that one. I got that one. I want that one. I've got that one. I want." And as many T-shirts as we saw, Jeremy, you may have saw one that was duplicate, but I don't remember seeing one that was duplicated. It was all original. It was all different types of T-shirts.
It really was. It really was. I mean, even the one I had on, and I got that one from Ric Flair, RiverCity-Media.com, and I didn't see any of those, So so wrestling tees, man, good stuff.
Hey, and Wrestling Tee has their mystery box where you can, and I used to do that, so I've got like 6,000 shirts that's XL and double XL, but I've ate my way into 3XL.
Oh boy, now let's not start talking about that now. I'm hanging on to largest by thread.
Hey, I'm hanging on 3XL by I'm not going to 4XL.
Yeah, I'm hanging on by a thread. If it keeps going, well, I refuse. I will not buy. I can wear extra large and they actually fit good, but I will not buy anything above that for sure.
The day you break down and you finally top the 2XL, it's just all downhill from there. You know that feeling, Howie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, so we're going to just surprise everybody next Friday night or next Thursday.
Actually, the plan is I started to say this earlier, and I hate to say it, but if somebody passes away, we may have another tribute show, which I hope it don't happen. But if it don't happen, join us next week, and we will be talking about our top 10 commentators of all time, whether it be backstage, color, play-by-play, heck, even if it's a ring announcer. If you want to throw Howard Finkel in there, throw Mr. Finkel in there.
Man, he's so good. So good. And
hey, also, then in 2 weeks, I'll try to have a special guest. And this is a real special one. And I'm going to save it for a surprise for you guys. Because if I get this guy in 2 weeks, let's just plan on 2 weeks from now, special guest episode.
Look, I don't want to talk to Matt or Nick Jackson. I'm just going to tell you. Look, no, I'm not talking to him.
Well, that's good. So join us in 2 weeks with Kenny Omega.
Hey, I can go there. That's fine.
No, this guy is he does what we do, so he would be a podcaster. So just let me get him booked, and I'll leak it out to you guys because it's kind of a big timer.
Wait a minute, we considered podcasters, or I didn't know we reached that level.
Hey, like, follow, because I've been stuck on we've been stuck on 9,700 or 1,976 for like a week. And I want to break 2,000 so bad. I just want to do it, get over 2,000 and start growing. But God has said no more. So we've been stuck on 1976 for literally like 4 days. So like, follow, and share. Take us home, Howie Cheney.
Any closing remarks on the Adrian Street for you, Randy?
On the way out, I'm going to replay Imagine What I Can Do to You. And the video is 59 seconds. So when we say goodbye, the screen will go black and we won't have the normal ability to conversate because I am going to play this video on the way out.
Jeremy, you any closing remarks?
No, man. Hey, good times. Can't wait till next week. Talking about wrestling announcers play a big role. I'm excited about that because they mean a lot to the actual wrestling.
my solar plexus is tickled with anticipation of talking about my favorite announcer.
I show up with the crimson mask.
For the QB1 that makes it all possible, for Jeremy Johnson, I'm the Howie Chaney. Join us next week when you might hear me say, Randy, put your shirt back on, man.
Eat a dozen T-bones for my early morning snack. So imagine what I could do to you. I could tear a telephone directory in two. Bending iron bars is something else that I can do. I always pick my teeth with the nearest billiard cue. So imagine what I could do to you. To see my many attributes won't need a second glance. You know if you resisted, you just wouldn't stand a chance. I can knock a hole right through a solid concrete wall. I can pull a tree out by its roots and that's not all. Now you know about me, you don't need a crystal ball to tell you just what I could do to you.